Happy Sunday, everyone. I hope you all are well. This week is going to be a little bit different. I want to take a second to explain why. If, in case you missed it, here very soon our grades are going to be moving up. So, there's a couple of chapters in our curriculum that I'm just not going to get to because we don't have enough weeks before we get some incoming and outgoing students. And I am very excited for our next curriculum that we're going to be getting. I hope you are too. But that being said, there's a couple of chapters that I'm not going to have time to do. So you'll notice that there are some things that are missing in our gospel narrative as I read our curriculums this week. One of the more significant ones is we will be skipping past the Garden of Gethsemane and the institution of the Lord's Supper. If that's something that you still are interested in and you still want to dig into, then please email me and let me know. You've gotten this email many times already, but please email me and I can see if I can copy some pages and get them to you. That way you can look at them on your own. But that being said, also, I'm going straight into chapters 32 and 33 today. We're kind of taking both of them because they're both very important. Chapters 32 is talking about Jesus' arrest and trial, and chapter 33 is talking about Jesus' crucifixion. So I'm going to be reading both of those today. Starting with Jesus' arrest and trial. I'm still going to stop every once in a while to explain some things, but I'm hoping that I can get both of them done, and by the end of it, we haven't gone over by too much. So, our chapter 32, it was what we are starting with. And the theme of chapter 32 is the Son of God is condemned as a common criminal. We're going to be digging into that. But the scriptures that we're going to be in today with this story are coming from Matthew 26:47 through 27:31, Mark 14:43 through 15:20, Luke 22:47 through 23:25, and John 18 through 19:16, the first half of verse 16. Lots of good stuff here. Jesus' arrest and trial is chapter 32. So if you will work with me, then we will begin. Was it the ominous flicker of lanterns piercing the midnight blackness, or the tremors made by heavy footsteps pounding up the garden path that gave the first indication of approaching danger? Maybe it wasn't either of these. But was the murmur of angry voices and as men armed with swords and clubs invaded the peaceful garden? Out of the mob stepped Judas Iscariot, and with a kiss and the simple greeting, "Rabbi," the traitorous deed was done. It was a wicked conspiracy, late at night under the cover of darkness, and away from the people who only days before had hailed Jesus as king. Judas was betraying Jesus to the conniving chief priests and elders who wanted Jesus dead. Jesus was the Son of God. He could have resisted arrest and escaped. He could have called upon legions of angels to strike dead all those who came against him with simple man-made weapons. But he didn't. "Who do you want?" Jesus asked them. "Jesus of Nazareth," they answered. "I am he," Jesus said, and hearing these words, the men fell on the ground. I'm going to stop there for a second. So the power and authority of Jesus' words and the calmness with which he declared who he was filled those arresting him with dread. What Jesus actually said was, "I am." And in saying these words, he was identifying himself with the God of Moses in Exodus 3:14. If you're curious about what Exodus 3:14 is, then feel free to look it up. But in Exodus 3:14, God says, I am who I am. And in this moment, by saying, I am, Jesus was declaring himself to be divine. So this is part of what brought terror to the people that were arresting him. He wasn't declaring something small. He was saying that he was God himself, which was terrifying. Impulsive, Peter grabbed his sword, and with one swipe he lopped off the ear of Malchus, the high priest's servant. Jesus rebuked Peter. Put your sword away. Don't you know I could call upon legions of angels? But all these things must happen so that the scriptures can be fulfilled. Jesus touched Malchus' ear and healed him. As the soldiers led Jesus away, all of the disciples except Peter and John disappeared into the night shadows. At a safe distance, Peter and John followed the noisy mob back to the city. The next hours were ones of power playing, confusion, and manipulation by the Jewish leaders and the Roman governor, and of pain and humiliation for Jesus. The first stop on this long night's journey was to the house of Annas. Though the Romans had disposed Annas from the position of high priest and had made Cephas, Annas' son-in-law, the high priest, Annas still had great influence among the Jewish leaders. Jesus' visit to Annas was short, and soon Annas sent him to Cephas, where the Sanhedrin had gathered to put Jesus on trial. So there's a lot going on politically here, and I wanted to take a moment just to kind of explain some of the power plays that are happening, because they're really kind of important in this moment. According to Old Testament law, way back in the other side of the Bible, there was only supposed to be one high priest. At this time, when this passage is going on, both Annas and Cephas have the title of high priest. Annas had been disposed by the Romans, so the Romans decided they didn't like him, and so they just kicked him out. And they put Cephas into the position of high priest. So, officially, Cephas was the high priest, but Annas was the one who had the real power behind it. And at the time, the role of the high priest was more a political role than it was a religious one. So they were more concerned about keeping the peace between Jews and Romans than they were about being a high priest as we would think of them, as looking toward the spiritual health of the people. Also, the Sanhedrin. I know that this group of people has come up before. The Sanhedrin was composed of 71 men drawn from the leaders of the chief priests and Pharisees. They were kind of the primary governing body of the Jews, though they didn't have any power to actually persecute or kill anyone. They were still subject to the control of the Roman government. So though they were the governing body of the Jews, they didn't actually have much power over people. So when the Sanhedrin got a hold of Jesus and they wanted to kill him, they really couldn't do anything because they didn't have any power to do anything. And they had to follow the criteria of the Roman government. So that is a little bit, but that is kind of what's going on here. The Sanhedrin desperately wanted to convict Jesus, but where would they find witnesses in the middle of the night? When witnesses did come forward, their statements were false, and no two testimonies agreed. Finally, two witnesses said, "We heard him say, 'I will destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days.'" Jesus had been referring to the temple of his body and his resurrection after 3 days in the grave. The high priest, schooled in the scriptures, understood these words as a claim to deity. When confronted by Cephas, Jesus remained silent until Cephas asked, "Are you the Christ, the Son of God?" To this Jesus replied, "I am, and you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One, coming on the clouds of heaven." "Blasphemy!" Cephas shouted. "How much more evidence do we need?" All the chief priests and elders agreed. "He is worthy of death." They condemned Jesus to death for claiming to be God, but there was a problem. Only the Romans could legally execute a person. So the chief priests and the elders had to send Jesus to Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor. Before taking Jesus to Pilate, they blindfolded him, spit in his face, and slapped him. They mocked him, saying, "Prophesy, who hit you?" Meanwhile, in the courtyard of the high priest's house, Peter sat at the fire, warming his cold hands and feet. A servant girl saw him and asked, "You were with Jesus of Nazareth, weren't you?" Peter shook his head and said, "I don't know what you're talking about." Later, another girl asked Peter the same question, and again he denied that he knew Jesus. After a while, some people standing nearby said, "Surely you're one of his disciples. Your accent gives you away." Vehemently, Peter protested, "I don't know this man Jesus." Immediately the rooster crowed. Jesus turned and looked at Peter, and Peter remembered what Jesus had said about denying him. Peter fled from the courtyard weeping, many tears, because he knew he had sinned against his Lord. Judas, seeing that Jesus was condemned, was overcome with regret. He threw the 30 silver coins at the feet of the chief priests and elders. "I have betrayed innocent blood," he cried. Judas regretted his decision, but still didn't have a repentant heart. He ran off and hanged himself. The chief priests decided it was unlawful to put the money into the treasury, so they bought a burial ground for foreigners and called it the Field of Blood. After hearing the charge brought against Jesus, Pilate was confused. The only charge was blasphemy, and that wasn't a crime against the Roman government. Finding no criminal behavior in Jesus, the frustrated governor said, "I find no basis for charges against this man." Then, hearing that Jesus was Galilean, Pilate decided to send Jesus to Herod Antipas, tetrarch of Galilee, who was in Jerusalem for the feast. Herod was more interested in seeing Jesus perform miracles than in determining Jesus' guilt or innocence. When Jesus refused to answer Herod's silly questions, Herod and his soldiers dressed Jesus in an elegant robe, ridiculed him, and sent him back to Pilate. That day, Pilate and Herod stopped being enemies and became friends. Pilate's wife sent an urgent message to her husband. "I had a disturbing dream about this man, Jesus. Please have nothing to do with this innocent man," she pleaded. Pilate called together the chief priests and elders. "I have examined this man and found nothing to deserve death," he said. "I will punish him and then release him." It was the custom during the feast for the Roman governor to release a prisoner of the people's choice. In the Roman prison was a notorious robber and troublemaker named Barabbas. He had been imprisoned for causing riots and murdering people during the uprising. Pilate asked the crowd, "Which man should I release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called the Christ?" The chief priests stirred up the crowds, and they shouted, "We want Barabbas." Pilate was baffled. The people wanted this dangerous thief and murderer set free to rob and kill again, instead of the man Jesus, who appeared to be innocent of all crime. How could this be? 3 times Pilate asked, "What then should I do with Jesus?" Each time the crowd shouted louder and louder, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate was afraid of riots in the streets, so he took a basin and washed his hands, saying, "I am innocent of this man's blood." He turned Jesus over to the soldiers, who flogged him and put a purple robe and crown of thorns on him. "Hail to the King of the Jews," they mocked. Then they took off the robe and put Jesus' own clothes back on him. To the repeated cries of "Crucify him" from the incensed crowd, the soldiers led Jesus, the Son of God, away to be crucified. Chapter 33. I hope that you have learned some things in this. I know that it's kind of a grim subject, but I promise it gets happier, as we all know. But there are some important things to go over in this passage. This next chapter, chapter 33, the theme is the Son of God dies for the sins of his people. And the scriptures that this is using come from Matthew 27:32 through 66, Mark 15:21 through 47, Luke 23:26 through 56a, the first part of the verse, and John 19:16, the second half of the verse, through verse 42. If you're curious, you can read any of them. They are all true and accurate. The Crucifixion. It was early morning when Jesus trudged through the crowded Jerusalem streets to the place of crucifixion. Blood from his thorny crown dripped into his eyes and drizzled down his cheeks. His whole body, in shock from flogging, quivered in pain. The hate-filled screams of the agitated mob made his head throb, and the cross he carried became heavier with every torturous step until finally he collapsed. He couldn't go one more step. Even the merciless soldiers realized Jesus would never be able to carry the wooden cross all the way to Golgotha, the hill of death. "Hey, you, carry this cross!" The soldiers grabbed Simon of Cyrene, a visitor who had come to celebrate the feast, and forced him to carry Jesus' cross the rest of the way to the execution site overlooking the city. Women along the streets wailed for Jesus. "Daughters of Jerusalem," Jesus warned, "don't weep for me, but for yourselves and for your children. For the time will come when you will ask the mountains fall. For the time will come when you will ask that the mountains fall on you." Jesus was referring to how great the suffering in Jerusalem would be when Rome would conquer the city in AD 70. The soldiers brought Jesus to Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. And there at the third hour of the day they nailed him to the cross. When they offered him wine with myrrh to dull the pain, he refused it. Above his head they put a sign written in Aramaic, Latin, and Greek, describing the charge against him. "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." On either side of him, two robbers were also being crucified. From the cross, Jesus prayed, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Around the cross, the Roman soldiers divided up Jesus' clothes into 4 portions, one for each of them. Jesus' tunic, though, had no seams, and rather than tear it, the soldiers cast lots for it. People passing by sneered at Jesus and mocked him. The chief priests, in like manner, said he saved others, but he can't save himself. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him. Even the thieves on either side ridiculed him. After some time had passed, one of the thieves stopped his mocking and rebuked the other thief. "Don't you fear God? We deserve our punishment, but this man is innocent." To Jesus he said, "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jesus looked at him and said, "Truly, today you will be with me in paradise." Near the cross, 3 women watched and grieved. Jesus' mother Mary, the wife of Cleopas, who was Jesus' mother's sister, and Mary Magdalene. The disciple John was with them. When Jesus saw them, he said to his mother, "Dear woman, here is your son." And to the disciple John, "Here is your mother." From that day, John cared for Mary as he would his own mother. At noon, the 6th hour, a deep, penetrating darkness descended upon the land. At the time when the sun should have been brightest, it was as black as night. The gospel writers are silent about the events of the 3 hours of darkness. so that during the dreadful hours when Jesus became sin for his people, his anguish was not recorded. On the cross, the sin of his people was piled heap upon heap on Jesus, and God the Father, the most holy God, couldn't bear to look at his beloved Son. The covenant God, who promised never to abandon his people, abandoned Jesus in order to reconcile sinful mankind to himself. And so the 3-hour darkness is a testimony to the blackness of man's sin and the extreme cost of redemption to the Trinity. At the 9th hour, Jesus cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Knowing that everything was completed and that Scripture had been fulfilled, Jesus said, "I am thirsty." Someone filled a sponge with vinegar and offered it to Jesus. After Jesus received the drink, he said, "It is finished." And with a loud voice, he shouted his last words, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." With that, Jesus breathed his last breath. At that moment, God tore the temple curtain from top to bottom, exposing the Holy of Holies, and that eerie ripping sound terrified the priests who were offering sacrifices in the temple courtyard. Suddenly, the old order was over, and the new had come. Jesus' death had replaced the Old Testament sacrificial system. Following this, a thunderous earthquake shook the ground and split open rocks. Tombs broke open, and many holy people who had died raised to life. So I'm going to take a moment and talk a little bit about the temple curtain tearing from top to bottom, exposing the Holy of Holies. This supernatural miracle was God's means of declaring the old order as mandated by the Old Testament was over. Jesus had died, and there was no longer a need for human priests or animal sacrifices. Jesus, the perfect Lamb of God, had satisfied the wrath of a holy God against mankind's sin. The curtain that separated the holy place from the Holy of Holies symbolized the gulf that sin created between God and man. Once Jesus paid the penalty of sin through his death, the way to God became open to everyone. So this was kind of significant. The ripping of the Holy of Holies was a tangible visual of the fact that God was with his people. For the first time in the entire Bible, God was actually truly with his people despite their sin, because Jesus had saved their sin. So this would have been really significant. The Holy of Holies was known as a place that no one could go unless they were pure. So in this moment, the Holy of Holies, the place of purity, washed over everyone around them, so they could actually see God. Toward evening, Joseph of Arimathea, a rich man who was a prominent member of the Sanhedrin, asked Pilate for Jesus' body. Joseph was a disciple of Jesus, but had been keeping his faith secret because he feared what the other religious leaders would do if they knew he believed in Jesus. With the help of Nicodemus, Joseph took linen cloths and burial spices and prepared Jesus' body to be buried in accordance with Jewish customs. In a garden spot outside Jerusalem, Joseph owned a new tomb carved into rock. Here the two men laid Jesus' body. They rolled a big stone in front of the opening and sadly walked away. So there's kind of a lot in these two chapters. I am not going to pull out a ton of things because I think the themes that we talk about, they're I feel like both of these chapters have a lot to say, and I'm not sure I could do them justice. But they're very important. We learned a little bit about how the political climate around Jesus's death. We learned about the significance of the Holy of Holies ripping and Jesus being forsaken by the Father. And these are all really important because these are the things where Jesus completely identified with us as people. He didn't only identify with us through living, but he also identified with us so much that he can relate to death also. And unlike some of us, Jesus truly knows what it means to be forsaken by God, because he took all of the sin that we deserved so that we could be saved from it. So I hope that we can walk away thinking about the significance of that. It is so important, and it's so hard to think about, but I hope that we can sit in it and do it justice. Contrary to what we may think, I am not going to do Easter Sunday's story next week. That seems very strange because, yes, I know, Easter Sunday is the next passage. However, if you remember, I already did it on Easter. Imagine that. So it's already recorded. We've already looked at that lesson. So if you really want to look at the Easter Sunday lesson, then please go on YouTube and you can look up the Easter Sunday lesson that we did. It is wonderful and bright, and it's so worth it. And I hope that if you feel so led that you can go check that out. It is still there. If you can't find it, also, please email me. I will link it to you so that you can have it. My email is McInnis, MCIN as in Nancy, NISM @spu.edu, and I will answer you. If you can't remember that, then feel free to email Rebecca and she will get a hold of me and we can figure it out. So if you can't find it, please get a hold of us, and I would love to send you the Easter lesson so you can look at it. Our next chapter, you will have to see. So join with me again next Sunday, and you can see what we're talking about next. I hope you all are doing well. Thank you for sticking with me as I go through two kind of sad and hard but good chapters. Thanks for being great. I hope that you are able to think about it and think about what this all means. Have a great day, you guys, and it's always great to talk to you.